Michelle with the blog Joyous Garden, and today is so hot that my eyes are burning, but I am going to be talking about one of the most popular plants in the world, so stick around for that. So the plant of which I speak is lavender, and more specifically I'm going to be talking about caring for it and growing it in pots. So if you are new to this channel, as I said, a welcome or welcome back. I make videos about gardening both indoors and outdoors, and as usual there is a blog post to go along with this video which will have more information in it. So the link for that will be down below in the show more box, or I don't know where it is on phones, but I know that if you're on the computer it's in the show more box. I just want to give you a heads up, this video is about growing lavender in a pot outdoors mainly. I have grown it indoors, but I'm not going to cover that here. That'll be in the blog post for you. So lavender is prized for its fragrance and its flowers, but it also has culinary uses too. And it is native to Mediterranean regions, and it likes it sunny and on the dry side. So here it is. I just want to start this out by saying that I live in Tucson, Arizona, not the best climate for growing lavender. Rosemary does much better here, but it's very interesting because I bought this plant at our farmer's market. It was grown by two students at the University of Arizona, and they grew it hydroponically. Now, that is one plant I would never think of growing hydroponically, but here it is. So I want to tell you a bit about my experience with growing lavender. Is I was a professional gardener and landscaper in the San Francisco Bay Area for well over 20 years. I planted a lot of lavender. I cared for it. My mother lived in Sonoma, California, which is probably about the most ideal climate you can get. Sonoma, Santa Rosa, Napa, the days are about, in the summer they're about 90, but the evenings get a bit cool, so lavender does really well there. So I have had a lot of experience with it. I'm just not growing it now. This one looks a little sad because it was outside for a while, but I'm going to be pruning it at the end, so stick around for that because it does need to be pruned. But anyway, so the growth rate of lavender is what I would call slow to moderate. It's not a really fast, it's not a really fast grower. And the size depends on the variety and the type, but anywhere from 1 foot to 4 feet. This isn't English, this is a type of English lavender. It's Munstead. It'll get about 2 feet by 2 feet. And the flower color that we associate with, lavender is a purple, violet, blue, but there are also some pink lavenders and some white lavenders also. And in terms of hardiness, this plant is hardy in zones 5 to 10. Now, not all of them are hardy for all those zones, so be sure and check the climate zone you're in and the lavender you're getting to make sure that it is going to do all right there. So the most popular or distinctive types of lavender are, or the most commonly found are English, French, and Spanish. And there are also hybrids, and there are crosses, and there are lots of different varieties, so there's a lot to choose from. The Spanish has a really distinctive flower, but this one, as I said, is an English one, and they all vary in terms of size, and the flower is a little bit distinctive on each one, so be sure and check which do well in your area or are sold, and then you can go from there. So regardless of what type of lavender you're growing in a pot, the care for them is all the same. So on to light exposure. That is full sun. Lavender does really well in full sun, 6 to 8 hours of sun. However, here the sun and the heat is a little too much for it. There are some lavender farms north of here and south of here, but they're about 10 degrees cooler than we are. Today it is 109 in Tucson, so that is pretty hot. But I mean, if you live in Phoenix or Joshua Tree or Palm Springs, you know what I'm talking about in terms of sun and heat. Okay, so a little closer up on it. This one is so fragrant, you know, especially in the heat. So watering, it depends on the climate, how often you water it, but a good general rule is to water it when it's almost dry. You will need to water it more in a pot than in the ground. They tend to dry out faster. Overwatering lavender is very common, so just watch that. And if you have a newly planted plant, you're going to have to keep your eye on that because it's going to need watering a little bit more often. So in terms of temperature and humidity, we've already touched on the zones it grows in, but different types do better in different climate zones. One important thing to know, though, is that it needs good air circulation. So if you're in a slightly humid climate and you have it in a corner, it's not going to do as well. It likes all this air movement around it to do its best. And what I forgot to mention in regards to the air circulation is that when I moved into my home in Santa Barbara, there was a lavender growing at the base of a 19-foot giant bird of paradise. It wasn't in enough sun. I lived really close to the ocean, so there was a lot of fog, and it had a lot of the black mold on it, and it just wasn't doing well, so I took it out. So on to fertilizing and feeding. Not much of any is needed with this plant. If you want to, you can give it a little compost or some worm compost or a blend every couple of years, and that will be fine. Soil and repotting, I've done a separate video and blog post on planting lavender in pots, so I'm not going to go too much into pot size and all that here. Spring, summer, into early fall are the best times to plant, and the most important thing to know is that the soil needs to be very well drained, and it's much easier to control the soil mix in a pot than in the ground. One more thing in regards to soil and repotting, just in case you don't watch the video or read the blog post, is that you want to make sure the pot has at least one drain hole in it, because you want to water it and then have all that water flow out. You don't want any building up in the pot. The cicadas are so loud right now, there isn't anything I can do about that. I don't even know where they are. Anyway, flowering. This plant is prized for its flowers. Most of them will flower early spring into early fall, depending on the climate and the type, but in general, it is a warm weather flowerer. So I'm going to cover winter care, pests, and propagation in the blog post, just to keep this on the shorter side. I'm trying to do more videos, so if I'm not yakking on too much like I am now, I can do more of them. So that'll be in the blog post if you're really interested in that. But I'm going to zoom back in so you can see me prune. But first of all, I'm going to say that you want to deadhead after each flowering. That's going to encourage more bloom throughout the season. And when you want to do the big, pruning or the bigger pruning is in spring, early spring or spring, depending on your climate zone. And you want to take it down by 1/4 to 1/3, because lavender tends to get leggy and stemmy. It'll just keep it in better shape, and it'll also help it to flower better, which is, of course, what we want. Hopefully you can see this better here. I try to put it against the solid backdrop. But this part of the plant has always looked better than the back part. So I'm going to turn this part around. And I've actually been growing this inside for 2 weeks because it got so hot. I wanted it to at least survive until I did this video. So on something like this, I want to take all the blooms off. So I'm going to I'm going to start there and just do that. And then there's some dead leaves I'll just go and clean up afterwards. But you can see how it's kind of drooping here. So I'm just gonna see if this helps it any, just to do a little bit of a tip pruning. So here we go. Let me just make sure that you can see it here. Yes. So in here, the flowers end about here. So I'm gonna cut it right there. And then there's just a couple of dead ones on here. So I think I'm gonna take it down to right here. There, and that might help this to fill in a little bit and not be so darn droopy. And this one here too, it's got these, so I'm gonna go down to here. Because there's a flower here and a flower here, so I'm just gonna cut right there. And salvia is in the mint family, by the way. It has square stems. That's how you can identify those plants. One more there. This is starting to look better already. Okay, here's this one here. There's a flower here. So I'm gonna take it off right above the nodes. There's 2 branches coming out there, or 2 stems. I'm just gonna cut the main stem right there. There we go. This is not looking good. This is not looking good either, so I'm going to take it down one more. And then this one here is just a little bit, needs a little bit of filling in, so I'm just going to cut it there. And the front I'm going to leave. So there's the plant. There's the plant now. It's as I said, it's a new to me plant, so we'll see how long it does well here. I think I'm going to take it back inside because I have a lot of light in my house. And then when it starts to cool into the 90s, I'll bring it back outside. Here we go. I just wanted to show you what the lavender flower looks like, or this lavender flower. Again, it is one of the English ones. It's dried, obviously, and the foliage. But also, too, I forgot to tell you, I used to work on an herb farm. I worked on an herb farm for about 1.5 years. It was called Catnip Acres Herb Farm. Okay, so I'm getting hot, and the camera is getting hot, so time to wrap this up. But here is the lavender. It looks much better after pruning. It's one plant that does benefit greatly from a pruning, but the most important things to know about growing lavender are in a pot are to have the right type of lavender for your climate, to also have the right size. I couldn't have a 4-foot lavender in this pot, but I can have one that grows to 1.5 to 2 feet in this pot just fine. And you want a very well drained soil. You want it to have a good amount of sun, unless you're someplace like here. And you want to keep it on the drier side. So I hope you have found this video to be helpful. I'm uploading more videos on a more regular basis now about gardening, both indoors and outdoors. Actually already have 4 films, so whoa. And we do a short every week too. But I thank you for all your likes and your subscribes. I really appreciate them. Now let's get out in our gardens and make our worlds a more beautiful and fragrant place. As always, I thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next video. Bye.